Hi everyone and welcome back to the garden. So today we are talking about the main area of the back garden. Now, the major feature of this part of the garden is the large lawn, which is sort of central to the space, and it is surrounded on three sides by various different types of planting. So we have the arid planting, which is on this side, which you may have seen in one of the other videos, and the fire pit area is off on this side of the garden. But we have a different style of planting that runs along this side and to the very back of the garden. So this large area of lawn, it's got these lovely curves that run around the borders, and it just gives the whole space a sense of kind of movement on there. So we also have in this area, we have pop-up irrigation in the lawn. So that keeps the lawn nice and green in the summer. And we use the lawn for various activities throughout the summer. And also in kind of like in the autumn time, we have a large Halloween party. So I put out loads of Halloween props and things, and we open the garden for charity for people to come and have a look at the Halloween props as well as the garden. And we also have various Christmas things that we put out in the winter to obviously celebrate Christmas. So on this side of the garden, we have a slightly different theme to the rest of the garden. So this is your really classic kind of exotic style planting. So all the plants are crammed together. There's lots of different leaf textures and various colours that kind of merge throughout the border. So what type of plants do we have in here? So the evergreens that we have in this space, so we have yuccas, we have fatsias, and we have palm trees all in amongst this, as well as we've got choisias, we've got some evergreen grasses as well. And this all forms the backdrop to the garden in the winter time. Because all the other stuff like the cannas and the daylilies and a lot of the ferns and stuff, they all die back to the floor. So I didn't want this space to be completely open, because that would ruin the kind of the vibe of the secluded jungle style clearing that we have over in this area. So colour wise, we have Verbena hastata, which is a beautiful purple flower standing about 5 foot tall. It's a really dainty flower and it moves quite well in the wind. It's quite similar to Verbena bonariensis, which you see quite often, so you could use it in exactly the same way. We have the classic cottage garden plant Rudbeckia, and Rudbeckia is really useful because it gives very late colour to the season. So this will be flowering literally from kind of mid-July right the way through into September quite easily. It works really well in this garden because of the hot, vibrant kind of yellow on there, and that daisy looking flower I think works really well with the exotic style garden there. We also tucked behind, you can't really see it very well, but we have a pineapple sage, which has got a really interesting pineapple scent to the leaf, and it does have a red flower, a little bit insignificant. And behind it we have some persicaria, which again splashes of pinky red colour, but nothing too dramatic on there. This border is very much about the big shrubs in there and the mix of colour throughout the whole season. So in this space, this is the walkway which goes through to the chicken coop. And this area here kind of gives the sort of woodland style garden vibe. And I've got a large lilac tree here, and I've actually put some of the plants onto the tree with wires and moss as if they are epiphyte type plants. This gives this a kind of like jungle style rainforest sort of look to it, and it just adds a little bit more depth to this section. So we have either side here, we have a Trachycarpus palm and we have a Butia odorata on this side. And these will eventually obviously gain even more height, allowing this kind of understory area here where we can plant lots of plants. So that process has already kind of started. But as they get bigger, I guess the opportunity to grow some taller things under here will come off on that one. So here we have a closer look at the plants which I've wired to the tree trunks here, and you can see that there's one is in flower already. So other plants in this area of interest, so we have a low growing phlomis, which does actually have some nice yellow flowers which come up in the midsummer time. We have a hydrangea at the back there, sort of hiding. There is a, what else have we got in here? We've got a Shephra Taiwaniana. It's not looking that great though. I'm not sure it's really liking this position. Of course, as always, we've got lots of kind of ferns, ground cover in there as well. And we do have the Persicaria red dragon on the edge of this kind of walkway. And we have another variety of Persicaria on this side. Now, interesting to note here that generally the chickens absolutely love eating it. So you see all the stalks, all the leaves are chewed off. Anything they can reach through the bars, they will nibble on. So this area here is an area that's used quite a lot. So as you come to the top of the garden, this walkway basically takes you through to the greenhouse section and my area that I use for kind of potting and storing plants and soil and wood chip and things like that, and empty pots. So that's all through this way here. So either side of it, so we've got this amazing Musabaju on this side, the hardy Japanese fiber banana. They are brilliant. You can grow them from quite a small plant to quite a big plant like this within a couple of years. So they are absolutely fantastic. They just literally need loads of water and loads of feed and sunlight, and they will absolutely romp away. Really reliable. All I do in the winter is I wrap the stems up with, I've got some loft insulation which is made from recycled plastic bottles, and I bought that from B&Q on a big roll, and I just literally wrap all the way around the trunks, and I put a weed membrane over the top of it because it's basically black in color and it hides the kind of the bright white of the loft insulation there. Also in this section we've got a couple of lemon trees which are in a little bit of a shady position, but they have fruited before, and we have a kiwi vine that goes over the top of the shed in the background there. And then we have a few palms in pots at the moment. They may go in the ground with time, but I need to see how hardy they're going to be in this sort of area really before I do that. So we've got a Washingtonia robusta here, and we've got a Braha amata on this side. This was the first one I bought and I absolutely love it. It's one of my favorite palms. That silvery blue foliage is absolutely fantastic. So much so I bought a second one as a backup, which is actually a little bit bigger than the one that I have here. But both are growing actually pretty well. I had a few leaves die on one of them, but it's still, the central spear is looking good and we've got good growth on them. So other plants we have in this area, we've got a senna bladder or a bladder senna, I'm not quite sure which way around it is. Has these fantastic seed pods that are like full of air, but they look like a little bladder. And I think it's a member of the pea family, and it has really funky yellow flowers as well. Next to that, we have a large Spanish reed, which is a Rhododendron, and it looks a little bit like bamboo, but doesn't spread as much as bamboo. And it just slowly forms a clump over time. And you can actually divide that clump and move it around or get rid of it if you don't want it in the garden. So yeah, let's move forward and have a look at the back border. So this back border here is south facing, so it gets a lot of sun throughout the day. Sun comes up over there and it moves around and it sets over there in the corner. So actually during the winter time, this bed does get a lot of sunshine. So things like, although I do wrap the bananas, they generally, I have gingers underneath them and I just heavily mulch them. They come up every year and they don't kind of frost off, which is really, really good. In the background here, we've got a large cherry laurel hedge, and that acts as a really good windbreak for the cold northerly winds. And you always find in the winter that even when we have quite a heavy frost, quite near to the hedge, there's generally not a lot of frost. So a lot of these plants are sort of semi-protected on there. Now, the other plants that we have in here, so we have a Trachycarpus fortunei, another one in the corner here. This one's got enormous leaves, so maybe it's a slightly different variety, but it's looking really, really great. And behind that, we have another Tetrapanax papyrifera rex, and this one started off as a small plant about this tall, and it is now about 7 foot tall. It's put on loads of trunk this year and is now starting to get above the Trachycarpus, which is quite fast growing, but not as fast growing on there. We have a ginkgo tree, which adds a little bit of different foliage to the space, and that will obviously grow quite tall and thin as time goes by. I might have to trim that to keep that kind of in order. We've got more Rudbeckia, we've got different types of Persicaria. There's a red dahlia, which is the same variety as I've got in my front garden. And with the dahlias, I don't lift them up and dry stalk them or anything like that. I just heavily mulch them. And on the very, very coldest of nights, I might put, say, like an upside down large flower pot over it just to protect the ground underneath it. Other plants we've got in here, I'm growing a Fatsia camouflage, which is hidden at the back here at the moment, but will basically grow up behind the variegated maple, so that in the winter, when the maple drops its leaves and the grass and the crocosmia are not up yet, there will be some evergreen structure there in the winter. And of course, that type of Fatsia has quite funky, different coloured green leaves. Highly recommend it. You can get it in various nurseries from time to time, but it's a little bit more rarer than the original one. The other plants we have in this area, so we have a euphorbia, I think it's a John Phillips here, which is a very large euphorbia, and it kind of contrasts against other euphorbia, the Wolfenii, which I have in the garden as well, with a bluey green foliage to it. So generally, this whole kind of L-shaped border, so the back one and the side one that I've just shown you, that is the kind of the classic tropical style kind of planting where everything's crammed together. So traditionally, with your standard kind of English style borders and gardens, is generally you find that people put very narrow borders around the edge of their garden, and because they're so narrow, you can't really get any real depth with the planting. So one thing I do here, and it's a really good tip, is don't always plant things where they're really, really short at the front leading to tall at the back, because it can look quite one-dimensional. So at the front of some of my borders, I've got quite tall plants, but those particular plants have been chosen because they're quite light and airy plants, so you can kind of see through them. And this adds depth, and it means that kind of as you explore, your eyes kind of explore the border, you're able to see different things at different times, and it's not all immediately revealed as soon as you look at it. As I said before, with this type of planting, you want to cram in lots of different plants together and lots of different textures and things like that. It can look really, really busy, and that is the point of creating that sort of border. But also you've got to bear in mind that you don't want the border to look too fussy and too complicated. And a way of getting around this is by planting your plants in groups. So you'll see when I've got a group of Rebecca, I've got a decent sized group of it. It's not one plant. And I also repeat that planting throughout the garden so that your eye is drawn to the same kind of plants and it ties everything together. Really, really important to do that, I think. Another way you can do it, not just with colour, but you can use leaf shape or texture and things like that. So for instance, with the Trachycarpus fortunii or other types of Trachycarpus, it has a fan shaped leaf. You can repeat that throughout the garden, and it means that you get that interest going through and it ties everything together. Also, bearing in mind that is like a fan shaped leaf, you could use something like a Fatsia, which has also got a large kind of hand shape leaf. That actually goes quite well with the Trachycarpus on there. And then if you then pair that up to something completely different, like a yucca, which has got like a sword shaped leaf and it's a silvery blue kind of foliage, you've then immediately got some different textures and different shapes going on. But the sword shaped leaf of the yucca does actually match on the Trachycarpus, where you've got the hand shape. It's like the single parts of like the fingers of it kind of tie in and match. So I think that's really worth doing throughout the garden. So as I say, it depends on what you're after. Ultimately, it will be your garden that you're kind of designing and planting and everything. So ultimately, you want to put the plants in there that you love. But I would say just try and tie them together, like as I say, especially if you're a plant collector. And I'm a little bit of a plant collector. And the danger with that is that you end up trying to get individual specimens of all these different types of plants, and you end up with kind of one of everything, and it can look really confusing. Nothing really fits together, so it looks like a collection rather than an actual garden. And it's a garden that you really want to aim for, because that will give you more relaxing space to enjoy, and it will look less fussy, and you want to relax in that space. So I hope those tips have really helped, and yeah, hope you've enjoyed the video. Please check out my other videos. I've got quite a few different videos coming up which feature the different zones of my garden. So things like the arid zone, the jungle clearing / fire pit area, and the woodland garden and things like that. And they will give you tips on how to design and what types of plants to put in those spaces. So I hope you've enjoyed the video. Please click the like button if you've enjoyed it, and I'll see you guys on the next video. Thanks for watching.